Hey guys, thanks for tuning in and watching this case study on a zero down landscaping business acquisition. I want to give a huge shout out to Forrest and Noble for providing immense value in this video, and we'll get into the content now.
So we're going to be talking about our deal breakdown that we just acquired, Blue Ribbon Landscaping. Some of the topics we're going to be discussing here is like how we found the deal, how we found our partners, how we structured the deal, how do we close in the deal, and then basically what does post-closing look like. So I'm going to pass it off to Noble here because he's the one that originated the deal, and he'll talk about, well, you can educate me on how you found the deal, Noble.
Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Thank you for setting this up. I kind of like to talk about like how I started with this whole thing. In the M&A space, a common piece of advice is to stay in your own lane. About 8 years ago, I shifted my focus into real estate, and my original plan was to buy music companies and home service companies. Even if it was in my lane, I knew I needed partners. I need to employ people to complement my weaknesses. So when I got into M&A, that was my first thought process, right? But first, it took some time to discover what my strengths were. This reflection led to a pivotal idea that changed my entire outlook. Instead of trying to figure out what business to buy, why not leverage the skills that I already had over 8 years in real estate? This included talking to people, negotiating, building relationships, and partnering with those who have strengths and kind of that balance my weaknesses, and vice versa, right? So immediately I started calling business owners and having, already conversed with thousands of homeowners. I applied the same skill sets. And at first it, was pretty challenging. One of my targets was an area, was an area in Atlanta. It wasn't overly specific, but the type of businesses that I wanted to kind of go after was home service type of companies. I got a hold of a gentleman who owned a landscaping company in Atlanta, and he was very, very motivated and wanted to retire, and kind of half jokingly said, when I called him, he said, "I've been waiting for you." I've been waiting for you to call me. Like, he said, where have you been all my life? In reality, he thought he wouldn't be able to sell and might have to shut the business down eventually. And so I built very strong rapport with him, and I negotiated a seller finance deal for his business. And that's kind of what we call an annuity deal or annuity type structure. However, I still needed a partner. So after reaching out to several investors, I mentioned it to Phil, and that's how we originally connected. And Phil found Forrest, and we're here today. And that's how it all started.
So basically you reached out to Jeff as the owner, right? He threw a cold call and you pulled that list. How'd you pull that list? How'd you end up getting his list?
That's a good question. I was kind of going crazy. Like, I was trying to see what was the best data.
Yeah.
One of my partners in real estate, his name is Max Brutus. He's always big about like getting good data, and I knew what my skill set was best, was talking to people.
Mhm.
And so I pulled a list. I don't know exactly what my criteria or my filter was at the time. I believe I wanted to pull businesses that were doing more than 500K in revenue, that had been around for more than 10 years. It wasn't specific to landscaping companies. It was more so specific to home service type businesses.
Right.
Because I knew I could find a partner if I got the right deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that Nimbler was the one that I would say that the data was very good in terms of just like, you call like 10 sellers and you're like, you're getting on the phone with, the data is probably not as good as it was for some reason back then, but yeah, that's what I kind of was coming back with.
Right. And then once you got a hold of Jeff, like because I want to understand like how long the follow-up process was, and like, the rapport building, like how long would you say that would be? Like 4 months, 6 months?
Yeah, so Jeff and I, so we talked around June of last year,
Uh-huh.
and I want to say a month in, we'd already negotiated a seller finance deal.
A month in. Okay.
Yeah, it was about a month in. So by July, August, we're already like, he's like, look, this is what I want. I said, hey, would you be open to somebody just, paying you over time? And he was like, absolutely. He told me in the beginning that he actually wanted to sell at the top of the year.
Okay.
So we had some time. And the thing that I had to realize and have realized, being coming from the real estate world, we'll do a deal, and if the deal can be over in 30 days, like it can be done. Everything can happen in 30 days. In the business world, it takes more time. So yeah, so to answer your question, we had been talking for, a few months, but really the negotiation started about a month in.
And so to like piggyback off of that, Forrest, is how me and Noble met was through an event, like through real estate. And I had a bunch of leads that I didn't have time to call or close. And so I was like, hey, Noble, help you talk to these leads. And then he's like, hey, dude, I actually have a lead like later on the road that I need help dispoing, like finding a partner. What I ended up doing, finding the partner, was basically taking all the information that Noble had that he collected from the seller, putting it on a bulleted point list of here's the seller context, here's the deal context, and making sure that it's like clear and concise. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We also have the financials in place. So you reached out to me, Forrest, in regards to taking a look at that. Like, what was your thought process on analyzing that deal from your perspective?
Yeah, so much like Noble, I was also looking for home services, largely in the Atlanta area. And so when I saw that popped up, actually previously to that had made a list, like a matrix and industry of all the industries that I was interested in. And then I had about 9, I think it's up to 10 now, criteria. So I would rate from 1 to 5 for each criteria. Things like, how much can marketing help it, which is where my background is. What's the barrier to entry? How susceptible is the technology? Like all these different things, like 10 different criteria. And landscaping actually came out number 1. So it's like landscaping, and then like electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, a couple things like that. And so when I saw that, I was like, hey, that's exactly what I'm looking for. We can do a deal here.
That's wild. Because wasn't it a lower on your numbers, revenue and EBITDA profit margins, or was it kind of in the exact same range?
Of what the deal that we were looking at is?
Yeah,
a little bit on the lower side, but as like the first one that I was doing, I thought it'd be a great starter deal. I kind of compared to like a starter home. It was a no money down deal, 100% seller financing, so it was super low risk. I mean, worst case scenario, we would just hand the keys back to the business, so there wasn't a lot of risk in it. So I was like, hey, this is a perfect one to get started on, because if we mess it up, it's low stakes. Whereas it was a really big one on the first one. If we screw it up, we're going to be in trouble. So it was like a perfect opportunity where, ideally it would be a little larger, but it was like the perfect one to step into.
Yeah. And just for everybody else to understand that Forrest is in Pennsylvania. So he's actually in Georgia right now. He drove 10 hours down there. And so when me and Noble were talking about partnering with Forrest, we were a little unsure of Forrest because, we haven't really, I had conversation with them before, but we're trying to feel Forrest out, like see how he was. And so, so it's just funny because during our negotiations of equity split and finder's fee and all that stuff, we just wanted to kind of work with Forrest and basically have fair terms and conditions. We end up coming up with Forrest is basically the operator of the business, right? And you can speak upon that. But Noble and I, our skill set is to generate the leads and grow the company through acquisitions and mergers, right? So Forrest, your role in the business is what?
So operations right now, I usually like to do like a technical partner, and I try to focus more on like the business systems and like integration and marketing side. But since I have direct experience in landscaping with this one, I felt comfortable on it. The owner still wants to stay pretty involved, a day or two a week, pretty much indefinitely. So with those two in place, I thought, all right, this is something where I can step in and kind of be the main guy for this, and we'll hire a general manager at some point. So I'm working on, building. They didn't have a website when we took over. They didn't even have a Google My Business listing. So I've been working on getting that. All the customer data is just in his head. All the billing is in his head. So we've been really working on extracting that from his head and putting it into a systemized approach where when we add people on, it's not him communicating one-to-one for everything. With the network effect, every time you add a node to the network, you got to talk to that person individually. So it's all about getting it digitized and be able to work as a team.
Yeah, most definitely, for sure. And the other part of partnering can be very scary because you're entering a marriage, basically, as far as business is concerned, is that we never had any prior, workings with either one of us. And so I think Forrest driving down from Pennsylvania to Atlanta was an awesome kind of situation where Noble and I can kind of jump in the car and do a 10-hour ride all the way down to Georgia.
Yeah. You want to talk about a good way to get to know someone?
Yeah.
On New Year's Day, right?
Yeah. And
even broke down along the way.
Exactly. I was gonna go into that. So we actually broke down. We you can tell the story for us if you want. And yeah.
Yeah, well, we were driving down and just kind of trying to unfamiliar territory, and I almost missed an exit, and I guess I took it a little too late and hit a curb a little hard with the tire, and it went out. And so it's New Year's Day, mind you. So it's not like a lot of places are open, and we were hoping just to find something to get it back on the road. And an hour or two later, we were able to keep going. But it ended up being a long day. I think we got in like around 1 a.m.
Yeah, we did. But if it does taught me anything, Forrest is definitely a fast and furious driver. So he loves going fast.
Just like the business.
Yeah. All right, cool. So, and then we also, since Forrest also a part of partnering, he actually also had a fractional, partial CFO that joined his team too, right? So that actually helped a lot with the business. And so, he's based on your previous mentorship program, like how'd you end up meeting Ben?
Yeah, he was what I call my profit coach. So he coaches on a lot of it is like numbers, so profitability, margins, but also business in general, mindset, following goals. I mean, you guys have seen him on the calls. He's really good about that, kind of clarifying and keeping you on track. He was looking to do what we're doing, and we said, hey, let's just go from clientee relationship to like partners and go full into this. And so we ended it with a marketing agency, and now we work together on this side. But it's really nice to have him in there because he's seen a lot of businesses. He's coached some pretty big businesses, and he just knows what the numbers should be and where we should be like targeted to. So it's good to have that.
Yeah, the stuff that we don't want to do, that I don't want to do for sure, at least. Right. So
yeah, and it's important. It's profit.
Yeah,
that's what it's all for.
Yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the next topic here. How do we structure the deal? So Noble, how did you end up structuring the deal with Jeff initially? I know you said seller financing, monthly payments, but what is the actual numbers look like when you first talked to him about that, if you remember?
Yeah, so when I first talked to him, I first asked him, what do you need? And he pretty much told me, he said, look, he said, I need, 250,000. I think that would just make me, that would make me happy. And that's when I mentioned, I said, okay, would you be interested in taking that over time and maybe saving some on taxes? And he said, absolutely. And so that's kind of how we started. We had that already kind of talked about and kind of verbally agreed upon. That's how we would purchase the company. But we didn't get too detailed. So as you remember, Forrest, really the negotiations were like kind of not stale, but they were kind of just like for a while. We just knew we were going to negotiate a seller finance, and we hopped on a call with him. And that's when I was negotiating. Remember, he said, hey, I want 25,000. I didn't even know what he wanted down, but he said, hey, I want 25,000 down. And I kind of guessed that because some of the things he was saying. And so that's when we started negotiating and eventually agreed upon 10,000 down.
Which had a lot to do with the working capital that we were starting with.
Exactly.
He was a little short on it.
Exactly. And we agreed upon 4,000 a month. The company was doing about 35K in revenue and about 20% profit margins, if I'm correct, right? Somewhere.
Yeah. about 450 for the year, and then margins he's had about 90 or so EBITDA.
Right. And maybe Forrest, maybe you can maybe talk about, you know, the negotiations, because one thing I realized, like with this particular structure or with however we negotiated it, it kind of changed over time because we ended up getting to a 0 down deal.
Yeah, it was nice because you guys had opened the door to the seller financing, that he was totally open with that. I mean, I've had plenty of conversations where people don't want to do that, and depending on the deal, so sometimes that's a deal breaker, depending on how good of a company is. But for him, it worked out great because you guys had already hashed that out. You pretty much had the $4K a month piece worked out as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing was the down payment. So we pointed out that, hey, you're a little bit short on working capital for this size of a business. So, it's like, we use the analogy of, you don't buy a car with an empty gas tank. So like, hey, you're giving us, a quarter tank of gas when we really need to get home and have a full tank of gas. So we were saying, hey, we're going to just chip that off the down payment, or otherwise you come up with the cash. Works the same for us, right? Because it's the same amount of money either way. So he ended up coming up with the cash, but then the final piece was he still wanted 10,000 down. But when I flew out to meet him on the due diligence trip, the first time to meet him at his kitchen table, we're sitting there and he told me that he wants to keep this piece of equipment. It's like a Takeuchi mini excavator. And he wanted to keep it because he wants to use it on a property he's working on. And they only use it, a couple jobs a year. You can rent them out for $500 for the day. And so he's like, hey, why don't I just rent it out to you? I'll keep it. He owes 14,000 on it. But it's worth about 34. So we got a 20K difference. So I was like, all right, why don't we take 20 from the front, or 10 from the front and 10 from the back? So the 10 from the front wipes out the 10K down payment, and 10 from the back just means we pull the duration of the loan a little bit shorter. So it ended up being 57.5 months for the duration of the loan. So that way that's how we ended up with the 0 down. Is just to split that 20K reduction in price for him keeping that piece of equipment, because that comes with the business. And then, so that's how we wiped out that 10K down.
So now we are actually buying the business for what, 240 now?
230.
230. Gotcha.
230 is what we bought it for, yeah.
So we have a total reduction of like basically $30,000. So you did all that during the first negotiation or the due diligence period with Jeff, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we went out there to meet with him and just seeing what he wanted to do. And he was very amenable. I mean, he might have even been the one who tossed out the 10K down.
Oh, wow. That's crazy, dude. That's
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard that first, I was like, dude, holy shit. Did Forces get a free business for us?
Basically.
I was like, oh, totally worth it. Totally worth it, man. And then, okay, so once all the terms were agreed upon between us as buyers and then him as seller, we end up closing this deal kind of in a weird way that I didn't think would be possible. It would be basically a handshake over the kitchen table, right? Which is like, coming from real estate background, Noble and I are like, where's the attorney? I thought we were going to an attorney office to close.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that we're going to a church to finalize all the documents, and then going to their house to basically sign the documents without any notary or any other witnesses except for everybody that's on the seller buyer. And so I was just kind of like, I was sitting there, I'm like, holy shit, we're closing? Like, what?
Yeah. That's what happens when you don't get a bank involved.
Yeah.
Right.
And then right after, we end up going to the bank to get a new bank account. And then we got our EIN number in the car, at Force's car, and then we just went inside the bank to open the bank account. And that's how easy it was to close. So any of you guys want to speak on that? I mean, did you plan that out, Forrest?
Well, maybe if Forrest,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, maybe you talk about what type of structure it was, like in terms of like the way we bought it, like through an asset sale. Yeah.
So I was a little bit like kind of the same way you guys were, because I've bought a house, and when you do that, it's a much different kind of affair. So, but I talked to my attorney, and he's like, yeah, man, it's a 0 money down seller finance deal. So there's not much to it. Like, It's just, there's not a lot to it. You just make sure you do these 5 things. He gave me a checklist. So make sure you do the operating agreement, make sure you transfer the title of the equipment, make sure you sign the purchase agreement, and then get a non-compete signed from him. He's like, if you get that, then you're good to go. There's not much to it. Just because it's him selling it directly to me, there's no third parties involved. So I just made sure I had the purchase agreement drafted up. We had our operating agreement set for the bank account and how we're going to run it. And then once we had those items, we just signed them, as you guys saw, kind of messily signed them at the kitchen table. His wife was making copies, brought it out for us. We just signed each piece. And I don't think that it ended up being, we did have to make one adjustment, so we reprinted it. But it's super, super simple. It's not much to it. Just, when you do it that way, it really makes it pretty easy. It's straightforward because no one can really get screwed. Like, we both want it to work. Yeah. Oh, and as far as the sale, we did a asset sale. So it made sense. I asked him which one he preferred, and he said it didn't really make a difference to him. So we did asset sale just because we get to depreciate his equipment.
Yep.
And the only thing we lost was the 25-year-old bank account, but we're not planning to loan or to borrow any money, so it didn't really matter. It made more sense on a tax perspective to do an asset and just keep it clean. He didn't have any issues like legality or people coming from him, but if it's all the same, then we might as well just start fresh and not have to worry about any outstanding stuff.
Yeah. So go ahead, Noah. What were your thoughts on that?
No, I thought my thoughts on that was it was a great idea because for one of the things we did have to do is we kept the name, but Forrest, you came up with a great kind of add on to the name because you couldn't keep the exact name, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit, and we maybe can talk about how what our goals are in terms of acquisition on top of that. But yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I tried to, when I went to file, so mind you, we're closing in. We have this all scheduled for January 2nd to go in, and it's like the week between Christmas and New Year's, and I'm trying to get this LLC started. And I filed it the first time and it got rejected because it was the same name. So then I just figured, hey, we're going to keep growing. We're going to get some tree service at one point. So I just added Blue Ribbon Landscaping and tree service. And then I had to pay an extra $250 to get it expedited. And it came in like 2 days before we were supposed to close.
So then you said immediately, hey guys, we need to get some tree service companies.
Exactly. Yeah. We got to live up to the name.
Yeah, right. But that's the goal. Like, this is a small company, obviously our goal is to grow through acquisition and buying other companies to roll up into this company or bolt on to this company. And I think that, it being a landscaping company. So yeah, that's pretty much, what my thoughts are in terms of us, kind of continuing, and our thought process was, to grow the business.
Yeah. I think we can all agree that this deal as it stands alone is probably not really something we'd really pursue. Like, if we weren't going to grow it a lot, but with the ability for you guys to find and identify and negotiate acquisitions, it gets really attractive because now we have a place to start from, and you guys can add it on. And imagine going from 1 or 2 clients here and there to 50 clients at a time.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think right now, like the last topic of the discussion here is like, what does post closing look like? We only have this business for, I don't know,
4 weeks.
Literally 4 weeks. So we're on our 4th week right now. Like, how has the last 4 weeks been for all of us? Like, you can go ahead for us since you've been in the day-to-day operations.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was getting the marketing assets going. Like I said, he didn't even have a Google My Business profile or a website or any of that stuff. So I've been having my team kind of put that stuff together, getting the logo finalized, ordering shirts for the team so they look like they're, professional. Hiring, we ran ads to get applicants. So I'm still trying to find a good potential foreman replacement to replace Jeff, the owner. I've already, just anyone in home services know it can be tough to find good people. So we've already gone through a few, but luckily, with marketing as one of our top skill sets, we can find people pretty easily just through marketing efforts. So that's a lot of that. I mean, today I spent 3 hours with Jeff trying to just get contact information for the customers. So just diving into nitty gritty. I mean, I've spent hours with him trying to say, like, all right, what's the next step for this? How do you do this piece? how do you bill for this? What is your billing? How's your estimate process? Just every little single process I had to go down and like learn it. And then we're going to codify it to systematize it.
That's what post-closing looks like for Forrest as the operator. For us as the acquisition side, for me, I can speak about, well, we're just basically generating a list that, you know, Forrest's team has also kind of came up with, and we've been cold calling, we've been direct emailing, cold email in a sense. And we have about 2 to 3, I would say 3 people that are interested in potentially selling their landscaping supply business and tree serving company. So we actually have a appointment for Forrest that's booked on this Friday at 10:30 with the tree service that he's going to go talk to. So that could be another bolt-on acquisition. And then we're continuously looking to follow up with the other leads that we have in our CRM system in the general area. But I'll pass it over to you, Noble. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of interesting. So we're like coming from the real estate world. You have a lot of competition, right? When you're going after a certain list, there's a lot of competition. You know, for me, I feel like it's somewhat of a blue ocean. When I reach out to these people, you know, they've probably never been contacted before. We have an appointment scheduled. We're getting financials from him. It's just one of those things where I think we're just using our skill set. And I'm seeing that there's a huge opportunity. And yeah, I just think that's pretty much, these past 4 weeks have been good because I thought it might take a little longer for us to kind of really, you know, get some traction. But it seems like we have some traction.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on, oh, go ahead.
No, I said, and we're going to ramp it up as well.
Yeah, to piggyback on your point, Noble, I mean, a lot of these guys, they're usually being asked for money, but we're essentially offering them money, right? That's what I tell Andrew, the guy who works with you. He's an appointment setter for us. And it's like, you're calling these people to give them money, which is a totally different conversation. A lot of times they're almost flattered, like, wait, you'd buy this thing?
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's definitely a different kind of conversation. Once you get past the initial distrust piece, but then you talk about how you're going to give them money for their business, they kind of perk up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like our goal for the first quarter is to get an LOI to either a landscaping company or a tree service company or even a landscaping supply company. So if anybody has any leads that are interested in potentially getting a referral, please let us know. We're looking into the Buford, Atlanta, outskirts of Atlanta area in that region.
Yeah, northeast.
Yeah, northeast, right. And you know, as far as the post-closing, as far as operations is concerned, that's what Forrest does. Books, like revenue and all that stuff, we haven't had enough time in order for us to get the numbers out to people, I'm assuming, especially us.
Yeah, we're finishing the changeover from QuickBooks to Xero. Yeah, it's steady from what it was before.
Yeah, perfect. So that's basically it, guys. That's all I got. And you know, you guys have any closing topics, any closing statements for people that are gonna be watching?
No, you just got to do it, man. We didn't really, you know, this first time for a lot of us, we didn't really know what we're doing. Just do it and figure it out.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, that's it, man.
Thank you guys for watching all the way up into the end of this video. It means all of our contact information is in the description below. If you have any questions, make sure you post them in the comments so I can answer them. If you guys have any leads, any landscaping, tree services, or landscaping supply companies, feel free to reach out to me. More than happy to talk to you about that. And make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you guys so much. Peace.